Well, thank you and welcome to everybody. And if anybody's got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Firstly, we'll start off asking Charles, has the management committee considered the draft strategy report yet? And if so, what was the outcome?
The answer is yes. It was slated to be given full consideration at the face-to-face management committee held on the 28th of October, which indeed we did. And I can share with you that it has been accepted by the management committee in full and unanimously. The recommendations, therefore, are still really in draft form because the membership have to have the chance to consider them. And for that reason, the strategy report will be uploaded to the website today, I think, and there's an invitation to pass comment on it. Some of the recommendations are already actually being put in place. There's no reason to delay on those. There are others which will require consultation with the individuals involved, and that will be taking place over the next few months. The strategy report considers where the Guild needs to be over the next 3 to 5 years, particularly the next 3. If you'd asked someone 5 years ago to project to where we would be today, they would have been hopelessly wrong for all the obvious reasons. So we're being realistic about it. We're saying, well, what can we realistically achieve in the next 3 years? And maybe there are some things that would be nice to have, but will take a bit longer than that. They're more aspirational, and we wouldn't probably expect to achieve them within the 3 years. So we're looking at a 3 to 5 year period. But yes, it's there, it's been accepted, and it's being implemented.
Thank you very much, Charles. Martin, have you got any comments to make?
Not really, because I've come onto this sort of fairly new, and so it was all a bit sort of overwhelming to start with, but I did read the paper in detail, and there's a lot of good stuff there, and a lot that I personally would like to see taken forward, and it's good. I think for the first time in all the years that I can recall being a member, that we've had a strategy at all. So that in itself is pretty marvelous in my view.
Thank you. Another question is, there's been some discussion on the forum about the need for large layouts at our shows. How is this to be addressed, Charles?
Okay, well, there are a couple of problems with getting large layouts to shows. The first is the sheer cost of it. The other is that there aren't so many out there. We could exhaust the supply of large layouts in probably 3 years. And where would that leave us? So one idea that's been bandied about the forum a bit is the idea of a modular approach. This is nothing new. It's not rocket science. The Americans have been doing it for years at their conventions. I go out to the States to their narrow gauge convention. There's always a modular layout there. And it tends to take the form of a sort of a serpentine end-to-end arrangement. Now, the reason it does that is because people build their own boards. And you can bet your life if you try and put them into a tessellation, when you get to the last corner, they won't mate up. And that's a bit of a challenge, because what our members are really wanting is a tail chaser. They want to see roaring run-bys. So whatever we do, if we take the modular approach, we have to make sure that it will all fit together. Now, I've put together a proposal, which was passed by the management committee, to explore interest in taking this forward. But it would have some differences to the modular approach that the Americans take and that the ON30 Society in the UK takes, in that the Guild would provide a 24-foot fiddle yard split into 2. So a double track, if you will, each of which would have sidings off it. The Guild would provide 2 semicircles of track for each end. Again, double track configuration, smallest radius 6 foot. And that would leave a 24-foot gap at the front of the layout to match the fiddle yard. And what we would seek to do is to offer that opportunity to the 7mm groups that around the country to each build a 12-foot modular section to certain standards. Now, these would be pretty much straight boards. They wouldn't have curved ends on them or anything. And the track would need to follow a certain specification in terms of position and profile and so on and so forth. So a 12-foot end-to-end layout is not actually an enormous project for a 7mm group to undertake. If we had 2, then we could put them together, and that would give us a 24-foot scenic viewing side split into 2 distinct halves. One of the participating groups would operate the inner circuit, the other would operate the outer circuit. So it would give them an opportunity to operate their stock on a large tail chaser layout, and will give plenty of opportunity for visiting members to see long, realistic length trains running past. Now, it's still in its early days. We have to spec it technically. We have to see if we can get some participation from a baseboard manufacturer, because all of these things have got to fit together. If we can do that, and there is interest from the 7mm groups, I think it's an approach that could certainly work in terms of providing the layouts. In terms of cost, that's another issue. Obviously, there'd be 2 groups involved. That would be 2 vans, 2 groups of people. But that's not going to be any more expensive than one group bringing their own large layouts. And in fact, because we would be providing the fiddle yard and the return curves, it might well be cheaper. Perhaps we could seek sponsorship in return for publicity from traders. That's another thing to be explored. So that's a way forward. It couldn't possibly come to fruition before 2024. It might take longer than that, but we'll see what the feedback is. So far, it's pretty encouraging. We've had 2 7mm groups, each offer to provide a 12-foot module. So that's a pretty good start.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions about that, please? Anyone at all? Martin, do you have any? Oh, Ian Allen, do you want to unmute?
Charles. Hello, Martin.
Hello.
Hi, Ian.
How would we, as an organisation, get around possible problems of, say, 2 groups coming together to produce, as you said, Charles, 24-foot scenic section, where one group would have done the modern image and another group would have done, say, Great Western 1930s. And one wants to run Great Western stock and the other one wants to run modern image stock, and you have that dichotomy of interaction that you would never see.
Yes, it's a fair point. If we only get 2 participating groups, that is a very likely scenario. I would hope that we'll get enough participating groups for us to be able to select 2 modules that logically would sit together.
Yeah, okay. Secondly, going off to what you said about sponsorship, I was at the G1 MRA 75th show a few weeks ago, and there was a layout there where each board had been sponsored by a particular person or trader or dealer, and they had a plaque on the board as well. So that might be something to consider as well for us.
Sponsorship, I think, will be crucial. One way or another, and yes, there will have to be something in return for it, and it may be something as simple as this module or this board is brought to you with thanks by whoever.
Lovely, thank you.
No, pleasure.
Thank you very much, Ian. Anybody else got any questions about that? Martin, do you have any comments?
Sorry?
Sorry, Martin, do you have any comments?
Only that I have seen this working not like Charles, I've not gone to America, but I've seen it working in Germany, where my daughter lives, and they seem to have these huge setups which they regularly hire a village hall for, and they come from all over the country and bring their modules and set them up. The only sort of problem is inevitably you get issues because if you haven't had a dry run before, things don't necessarily work first time. And it could be quite a simple thing of sort of a couple of millimeters out on measurements or something, and the tracks don't align or whatever. So it really needs a very refined set of standards with hopefully some patterns that are sort of made of metal or something, templates to ensure that the cross-board connections are absolutely first class and will stand up to the job, because I can't think of anything more embarrassing than turning up at Gildex with your 12-foot module and find that it's all a waste of time because it doesn't work.
Can I come back to you on that? One of the reasons for looking for a baseboard manufacturer to participate is to make sure that the boards are all compatible and have the same end pattern, probably with pattern makers' dowels, and the same securing mechanism. So baseboard compatibility shouldn't be an issue. With regard to track alignment, there is absolutely no way that groups are going to get their track in perfect alignment. And for that reason, my suggestion in the proposal is that the track stops 4 inches short on the return curves and 4 inches short of the boards on the scenic modules, and that we provide short sections of bridging track with sliding fish plates just to take up any slight misalignment.
Is it going to be DCC or DC or both?
Well, we would say that the track work has to be DCC compatible. The 2 circuits would be electrically isolated. So one could run DCC, one could run analog at the show if required.
So if it's to be run at analog, obviously then those will have to have section isolators as well within the boards.
No, because one group will operate the inner circuit and the other group will operate the outer circuit, and they will be electrically isolated.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
And what I'm trying to get at is that if you run an analog system,
yeah,
then you have to have track isolation to stop 2 locomotives setting off at the same time. You've got to have some sort of sectional isolations. Whereas if you're running DCC, everything's live.
Yes, well, everything can be live on the outer circuit, and you can run the inner circuit just as you would an ordinary layout. The fiddle yard baseboards could certainly be sectioned, because you wouldn't have a 24-foot train. So each siding could hold 2 or 3 trains. You could have 2 or 3 sections in it. If it's running DCC, then the default position would be to have those switched on. If you're running analog, then you would choose which ones you wanted to switch on.
I see. Anybody got any other comments to make about that? Moving on then. If there's anybody got any questions, either associated with the ones that I've already asked or anything else at all, please don't hesitate to come forward and ask the questions. This is the time to quiz these 2 esteemed gentlemen whom many of us don't know a great deal about. Some have met before on different occasions, but here's the chance to ask you questions about them. You know, what their ideas may be for the direction the guild is taking. Martin, have you got any ideas about that?
I'm very keen that the guild as such um, keeps the momentum going as far as membership and as far as delivering value to members to make it the one place to go for everything 7 mil. We have over the years become almost a mainstream type scale now, from being a very, very limited and specialized one. One sort of manifestation of this is that our founding fathers, I think there was probably, I think that 60 of them or something that actually started this thing, were all mostly ex-military men, and they had a degree of sort of perception of elitism, because they were in a minority scale which took money and effort to be a follower of. These days, you don't have to have much money, and you can buy lots of stuff straight out of the box, and you can create quite a nice little setup in not much more space than a good 4mm or other scale will take. And perhaps, we ought to be looking at the way that we project ourselves, and the word I get quite often thrown back in my face when I talk to people is guild. That seems to be a massive turn-off, especially for younger people now, because perhaps it smacks of the medieval trade union system, whereby you had to work as a journeyman apprentice and whatnot before you got your accreditations. It was all very well back in the 1950s, but is it still appropriate now? And does it do us a disservice? I would like to perhaps see us thinking hard about that and coming up with some renaming, perhaps, that got us away and put us on a track to be perhaps more attractive to younger people who are clearly impressed by 7mm modeling. Otherwise, these manufacturers would not be producing things in the volume they are. That's my take on the situation at the moment, anyhow, for what it's worth.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Charles, do you have any response to that, or are you happy with that suggestion?
Well, happy with any suggestions, really. If you look at the definition of guild, it's a mutual support group, and that was what the guild was set up to do. It was set up to support the trade and also support people who modelled in the scale. So it's appropriate, but I take Martin's point that the word possibly has fallen out of use, actually. It does smack a bit of Freemasonry and stuff like that. I don't know how important the word itself is. I haven't had any pushback personally, but it's something we can certainly consider. But if we're going to rebrand, it would be a big exercise.
Thank you. Moving on then. The Southern Show. There was talk earlier in the year of having a Southern Show in December, and because it was realised that the Guildford group were going ahead with their show after all, we cancelled it. Is there to be thoughts for a Southern Show in the new year?
Yes, we're very actively talking about that. We were hoping that we might be able to do something early enough in November that it wouldn't clash with the Guildford show in December, but venue availability is an issue. So certainly for 2023, we're looking at the possibility of a show in March, back end of March, at Kempton Park.
Before you go any further, I was understanding it might be May.
Sorry, I said March, didn't I? I beg your pardon. It is May. Absolutely. Thank you. 20th of May is the date we're looking at. It's chronologically pretty close to the show was at Doncaster, now at Barnsley for 2023, but geographically, of course, not close. So we don't feel that that would be a problem with regard to attendance, but it might be for traders. Traders might not be in a position to do 2 O-Gauge shows in such close chronological proximity. And at the moment, Jackie Neeshaw is going out to traders to get a response from them, sort of straw poll gauge response, and see whether they are too close together for them to be able to restock, or whether it's something they would be willing to do. What we don't want to do, because trader income is crucial to the financial stability of the shows, what we don't want to do is to put traders in the position where they have to select one show or the other, because that would be self-defeating.
Thank you very much, Charles. Yeah. Jackie, do you have any comment to make on that? I notice Jackie's in the room.
Yeah, no, I just concur with what Charles has said. It's absolutely essential to have traders with us if we're creating a new show. It was them who said, if we can't have it in December, let's look at May. And obviously we've got the King's coronation in May 2023. So the only date available at Kempton Park is the 20th. And at the moment, I'm getting responses back from traders to say whether they would be happy to do that, as well as Barnsley 2 weeks later. It's looking very positive, I have to say, because as Charles mentioned, we have 2 totally different geographical locations. The catchment area for Kempton Park is very different to the catchment area for Barnsley. And the traders are confident that they would have different customers from different parts of the country. So looking positive, but obviously it's early days and we need to get the feedback to be sure that the traders will come to both. Thank you,
Jackie. Alan Rhodes, I notice you put your hand up. If you want to unmute yourself to ask a question, please go ahead.
Yeah, the question is this. It's about clashing, because the 20th will clash with the 4 Mill Scale Society group, Expo EM, which has long been in that area, and that might cause a trader problem. And then the following week, you've got the Aylesbury, Princess Risborough, RailX, which is multi-scale. So you might find that your people might deplete some of the audience.
Thank you, Alan. Jackie, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I've had one trader saying that he'll be going to RailX the week after, but it won't stop him attending the Guild show. So that there are a limited number of our traders who also attend multi-gauge shows. And at the moment, I haven't had any feedback to say that it's causing them a problem. But thank you, Alan, because it's difficult to keep abreast of all the calendars that are going on. We obviously don't want to clash with another O-Gauge show. And clearly when Guildford said that they would be doing theirs in December, we backed off. But we need to be mindful of any other shows that the traders will be attending. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, they're both long-serving, well-supported. It isn't a problem for me, because I'll go to the Guild one on Saturday and then go to the Expo EM on Sunday.
I'm in watching somebody else's show. I'm not on camera.
Oh, who's this?
It's
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Alan.
We'll obviously feed back to people as soon as we get the reports back from the traders. So I'll keep you up to speed with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you, Alan. Martin, have you any comments to make about the Southern show?
Not really, no. I leave it all to Jackie, who knows what she's doing, and she's got a good handle on things. I will just poll up if I'm able to and enjoy the event.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got any other questions for Martin and Charles? Please, if you do have them, then please come forward. Because we're getting towards the end of the session now. I'd just like to thank both Martin and Charles for agreeing to come along and take the questions, both from myself and from the floor. Charles, thank you for providing some leading questions, much appreciated. And is there anybody here got any further questions for you? I'm not seeing anybody. In which case, just have to say this session has been recorded and it will be available later on when our wonderful Peter Reynolds, who is there,
Thanks, Peter.
transfer it on to YouTube. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'm going to
Thanks,
close the
guys.
session down now then. Thank you very much for your time.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.